I'm Dr. Lena Popovic, and after 30 plus years in medical practice, I realised there's a lot missing from modern medicine. Education is more powerful than medication, and our decisions have more impact than our DNA.
Last week's Brain Booster was Turn Up the Heat, a deep dive into how using a sauna more than 4 times a week can reduce the risk of dementia by over 60%. And I spoke for much longer than I intended because it was such a bold claim and I needed to explain how it could possibly be true. So I decided to end the episode after the health headline, which was also related to the health benefits of heat, because the feedback I've received from you is that you prefer my episodes to be under 1 hour long. So that's what I'll do. That means, however, if you haven't watched or listened to last week's episode, I strongly recommend you do so before you listen to this one, because last week I explained the rationale for what I'm talking about today. And that's why I'm launching straight into what's missing from modern medicine.
What's missing from modern medicine is doctors prescribing heat therapy as part of standard medical care, and that would be for numerous conditions. By now you can guess what they are: high blood pressure, heart failure, depression, insomnia, chronic pain, dementia prevention, and simply overall better health. And I forgot to mention respiratory conditions. So for completeness, saunas also help respiratory conditions, and they do so by increasing blood flow, that's a universal theme, dilating constricted airways, referred to as bronchodilation. And anyone who has asthma knows that bronchodilator medications are a foundational part of their treatment because they relax the smooth muscles around your airways, bronchi, which widens them and allows you to breathe more easily. If you have acute or chronic bronchitis, warm, humid air thins mucus in the bronchial tubes, so the mucus is easier to cough up, which reduces chest tightness and coughing fits. In chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, sauna use has also been shown to temporarily improve lung capacity and peak expiratory flow, and it does that by easing inflammation and clearing airway obstructions. And regular sauna bathing is associated with a lower risk of developing pneumonia, and it helps clear out residual chest congestion. So, how should heat therapy be prescribed? What's the difference between dry saunas, wet saunas or steam rooms, infrared saunas, Japanese Waiwan therapy, hot baths? Do they confer similar benefits, or is one modality better than another? What dose do we need in terms of temperature, duration, frequency? If it's a medication, are there any contraindications? And most importantly, how can the average person like you and me incorporate heat therapy as part of a healthy lifestyle without having to spend a lot of time and money? There are only so many hours in a day, and I don't want to spend all day trying to get healthy and not having time to actually live. Having said that, I do enjoy saunas and hot baths, so it's actually great to have a really good reason to indulge in them. So basically, the goal is to stimulate the adaptive bodily responses I described at the start of this podcast. And to get meaningful benefits, based on the research to date, a typical prescription involves raising your core body temperature by 1 to 1.2 degrees Celsius, which is 1.8 to 2.16 degrees Fahrenheit, for 20 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week. And different types of sauna deliver different temperatures. For a traditional Finnish dry sauna, the temperature needs to be 80 to 85 degrees Celsius, or 175 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit, for at least 11 minutes. But you get considerably more benefits at 20 minutes up to 30 minutes, for 4 or more days per week. This type of sauna is my personal preference, largely because most of the research to date is based on dry Finnish saunas, and it's also the type of sauna I have the most frequent access to at gyms and hotels. Infrared saunas work slightly differently. they don't heat the air around you like traditional saunas. What they do instead is they use electromagnetic radiation from infrared lamps to directly penetrate your body. That means the temperature inside an infrared sauna is much lower, around 60 to 65 degrees Celsius or 140 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So it means you need to stay inside for longer to reach the same core body temperature, and also to stimulate your heat shock proteins for maximum benefits. So 30 to 45 minutes as opposed to 20 minutes with a dry sauna. And for people who simply don't tolerate the intense dry heat of traditional saunas, this is a really valid alternative. A lot of the studies on treating depression have used infrared saunas to a really good effect. And infrared saunas might also be a good option for chronic joint pain. Personally, and this is just my idiosyncrasy, so please, I don't want to put anyone off, but I don't like the idea of radiation penetrating my body. Now, there is no evidence of infrared thermal radiation being harmful because it's the same type of radiant heat emitted by the sun, and it's even used in hospitals to keep newborn babies warm. But I have sensitive eyes, and excessive infrared exposure can be hard on the eyes. Glass blowers, for example, can get what's known as glass workers' cataract if they don't use protective eyewear because of repeated long-term infrared exposure. But as I said, this is an extreme situation and just my personal preference. A wet sauna, or steam room, is also less hot than a dry sauna. It gets to around 40 to 45 degrees Celsius or 105 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. But because of the high humidity, which approaches 100%, it feels more intense. And wet saunas usually use a generator to boil water and fill the enclosed space with moist, humid heat. This is probably the best option if you have a respiratory condition or dry skin, because the moist environment opens up your pores and deeply hydrates your skin. Also, the warm, wet air is highly effective for clearing nasal passages and soothing the respiratory system. So it's good for sinus relief, asthma symptoms, and seasonal allergies. Wa-on therapy is a really gentle, hospital-tested thermal treatment that uses a far infrared dry sauna at a uniform 60 degrees Celsius, 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And it follows a specific protocol. It was developed in Japan, and it was specifically for improving cardiovascular health, circulation, and vascular function while placing minimal stress on the heart. And it has been found to be very effective. And a typical Wa-on therapy session is divided into two phases. The warming phase, where you sit or lie comfortably in the far infrared sauna for 15 minutes. And then the resting phase. So after leaving the sauna, you wrap your body in warm blankets and you rest on a bed for an additional 30 minutes to retain the heat. And of course, water is consumed before and after the session to replace lost fluids. Can you get Wa-on therapy outside Japan? Access is growing, but it's just less standardized as a clinical hospital-based treatment in other countries. But you can certainly find far infrared saunas in Australia, America, and Europe, and you can just follow the protocol yourself. 15 minutes inside the sauna and then 30 minutes wrapped in a warm blanket to retain the heat and plenty of fluids. Now, you might be wondering, why does Wa-on therapy use far infrared saunas? And what's the difference between far infrared and regular infrared? The far infrared spectrum is divided into three categories based on the wavelength of the radiation, and each affects the body differently. Far infrared electromagnetic radiation, EMR, emits longer wavelengths that closely match the human body's natural radiant heat, and it penetrates the deepest into our tissues, up to 3.8 centimetres or 1.5 inches. Near infrared EMR emits shorter wavelengths that are closer to the visible light spectrum, and it stays on our skin surface, so it doesn't penetrate. And mid-infrared EMR emits medium-length wavelengths, and it penetrates deeper than near infrared, but not as deep as far infrared. So it would reach the soft tissues. And full spectrum infrared saunas use a combination of all three wavelengths to provide a multi-layered, customizable wellness experience. And wellness retreats will tell you there are specific benefits associated with each of the different wavelengths. And that might well be the case, but the science is simply not there yet. We just can't confirm all the distinct claims that are being made. But at least you're in the know about what it all means and where the evidence sits. I don't think at this point it matters that much which one you choose, just whichever one is available to you. And where do hot baths sit in the scheme of things? While traditional dry saunas have the strongest long-term longevity research, a 45-minute hot bath at 40 to 41 degrees Celsius, 105 degrees Fahrenheit, actually raises core body temperature more effectively and yields stronger acute cardiovascular and immune responses than both dry and infrared saunas. And the reason for this is that the physical properties of water make it much harder for your body to cool itself while you're submerged. And as I said earlier, even a 10-minute hot bath 1 to 2 hours before bed yields benefits that will help you get a better night's sleep. And the bonus of a hot bath is that you can listen to my podcast while you're relaxing in the tub. And are there any warnings or contraindications to using saunas? Most of them are common sense. Start slowly. Begin with just a few minutes in a sauna and gradually work your way to 20 minutes, which from the studies looks like is the gold standard. Obviously stay well hydrated. Drink at least 250 ml of water before and immediately after using a sauna. Cool down gradually. Do not jump into an ice cold plunge if you have high blood pressure or a heart condition. I'm not saying cold plunges are a bad thing. I'm saying if you have a heart condition, they are not for you after you've used a sauna. I have actually read a case study where a woman had a heart attack because she used a sauna, followed by a cold plunge, and she had an underlying heart condition. So especially in the early days of sauna use, allow your body temperature to return to baseline gently. Think like the on resting phase. And because heat therapy significantly elevates your heart rate and mimics light aerobic exercise, please consult with your doctor first to make sure it's safe for you. And this is especially critical if you're on blood pressure medication or, as I've just said, have a pre-existing cardiovascular condition, because even though it improves heart health, you really have to be careful with the way you use it. Never attempt to push through severe discomfort. You want to be mildly uncomfortable, that's the whole point of it. But if you experience any dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, or rapid heart palpitations, leave the sauna immediately. Go and cool down in a temperature neutral or only slightly chilled environment. As for who shouldn't use a sauna, I would not recommend saunas for the following groups or in the following circumstances. Pregnancy. Children under the age of 16. Uncontrolled high blood pressure, recent heart attack, arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats, or severe heart failure. Also conditions that inhibit sweating like MS, multiple sclerosis, certain nervous system tumours, or diabetes, severe diabetes with neuropathy. I'd also be very careful with epilepsy and seizure disorders because sudden temperature changes can trigger seizures. If you're running a fever, your body's cooling mechanism is already compromised, so it's a no-go. And skin conditions like severe sunburn, psoriasis, open wounds, they impair your skin's ability to hold moisture, so it significantly increases your risk of rapid dehydration. If you're wearing a transdermal medication patch like nicotine or nitroglycerin, heat increases blood flow to your skin, so it will increase the absorption rate of your medication, and you risk an overdose. And of course, never mix saunas or baths with alcohol or recreational drug use. Intoxication impairs your judgment, so you don't realize when your body is negatively reacting to high heat. And alcohol also raises your heart rate, so it could end up dangerously high. So what's the bottom line? I really hope that knowing the benefits of heat therapy in its various forms is going to encourage you to seek it out whenever the opportunity arises. If your gym has a sauna, use it after your workout. If you're staying at a hotel with a sauna, take advantage of it. If you have a bathtub at home, soak in it a few times a week, if not most nights. If you can afford it, get a sauna for your home, and then you can share it with your family and friends. And most importantly, whenever you use a sauna or soak in a bath, enjoy it and really savour the experience. Today's weather report is from Colin.
I would like to hear whether at my age, I'm 85, if it's too late to avoid Alzheimer's.
I'm very happy to report, Colin, that no, it's never too late. Adopting brain healthy habits at age 85 can still reduce your risk of cognitive decline, delay the onset of symptoms if you are on your way to getting symptoms, promote ongoing brain resilience, and lead to an extraordinarily fulfilling life. 2/3 of people who reach the age of 85 do not have dementia. That's the majority. So dementia is not an inevitable part of aging. It's the way we live our lives, not how long we live, that determines how well our brain continues to function. Have you heard of American architect Frank Lloyd Wright? Frank Lloyd Wright was between the ages of 76 and 91 while developing the initial and finalised concepts for the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and he was 91 when construction began. He also designed Price Tower in Oklahoma in his mid-80s, Beth Sholom Synagogue in Pennsylvania in his late 80s, and Marin County Civic Center in San Rafael, California in his 90s. And this sprawling complex was in fact his greatest public project. It was in his 90s, so age does not preclude you from doing amazing things. Benjamin Franklin invented bifocal glasses at age 78, and that was because he was frustrated by constantly having to switch between two pairs of spectacles while serving as an American diplomat in Paris. So he had an optician slice his reading and distance lenses in half and fuse them into a single frame. How smart is that? And when Benjamin Franklin was 80 years old, inspired by his love of reading and his own physical limitations, he invented the long arm mechanical reaching tool. Now, this was a long wooden pole equipped with a cable-operated grasping claw at the end. And he created it so that elderly or frail individuals could safely grab heavy books from high library shelves without having to climb up and down ladders. And in fact, modified versions of this exact device are still widely used today as trash or garbage grabbers and mobility aids. Then we have the remarkable Australian playwright, Julia Britton. Julia Britton was 94 years old when she had three of her plays concurrently in production in early 2009. And she was affectionately dubbed the oldest emerging playwright in the world. And she continued working into her mid-90s. This woman was an incredible example of later in life mental sharpness. She famously wrote and travelled internationally to oversee the London premieres of two of her plays at age 92. And in fact, that creative journey was captured in the global television documentary Fearless. Well worth watching. And when she was interviewed at 94 about her rigorous work ethic, her sharp advice to young writers was simply to harden up and ignore the critics. So that's what I say to you when someone tries to tell you that you're too old for something. Ignore the critics, especially your own inner critic. Take Patty Jones, who was still touring the world as an acrobatic salsa dancer in her mid-80s with her 40-year-old partner Nico, having only started acrobatic salsa dancing at the age of 69. Admittedly, Patty had actually been trained as a classical dancer in her youth, but she completely gave up her passion when she was 22 to get married and raise her 4 children. Then in 2001, she and her husband David moved from England to Spain to enjoy a quiet retirement together. But sadly, just 2 years later in 2003, David passed away from leukemia. So, finding herself a widow in a foreign country and refusing to just sit around at home, Patty did what any 69-year-old would do. She decided to seek out something entirely new to keep herself busy. So, she walked into Nico Espinosa's local dance academy to take flamenco classes. But Nico quickly noticed her natural rhythm, introduced her to the high-tempo world of acrobatic salsa, and the iconic record-breaking duo was born. And she and Nico spent over a decade travelling the world and shocking global audiences with gravity-defying spins, drops and throws. You can watch them on Britain's Got Talent, Spain's Got Talent, Germany's Got Talent, whatever equivalent talent shows are offered around the world, and also dance shows in South America. And as you've heard me say before, a dance a day keeps dementia away because it's physically, mentally, socially and emotionally stimulating in the most positive ways. Now, I could go on and on giving you examples of people who represent what's possible for all of us at any age. The reason the prevalence of dementia increases with age is because we've had more years of bombarding our brain with soft drinks, alcohol, sleep deprivation, stress, air pollution, and other risk factors for cognitive decline. And of course, genes also play a role, which I discussed earlier, but genes play a much, much lesser role than lifestyle. About 58% of the population will never develop dementia in their lifetime. And if you're listening to my podcast, Colin, then you're likely to be one of them. When you retire from work, don't retire from life. Keep giving your brain a reason to stay sharp, and it will. Do what you love with the people you love, and your brain will thrive. Continue to set meaningful goals that make you want to bounce out of bed in the morning, whether that's planting a new flower in your garden, doing volunteer work, catching up with a long-standing friend, learning to dance the tango, reading or writing a novel, visiting an art gallery, or taking up oil painting yourself. What gives you meaning, purpose, and joy? Do it. Do it now and keep doing it. Thank you so much for listening and sending me your weather questions. I will get to them all in due course. And I look forward to sharing with you another Brain Booster, Health Headline, Missing Medical Marvel, and Weather Report next week. Please note that this podcast is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice and is not intended to provide specific guidance for any particular situation. The use of this information is at the viewer and listener's own risk and is not a substitute for consulting a healthcare provider.